So I can't believe I've already come to the end of my First Nations Métis and Inuit Gned course. Here I'm drawing a turtle to represent one of the aspects of the Seven Grandfathers' teachings. Here a bear, a bison for respect, the beaver for wisdom, humility for the wolf, and the sabe represents honesty. Bowmanville is now on the land of what was traditionally the land of the Ojibwe people. They were known for their birch bark canoes, and also they made maple syrup. I looked up some indigenous words for the land we were on. I couldn't find anything for Bowmanville, but Nilgani Gitchagimi is what the indigenous people would have referred to Lake Ontario as. Here I'm looking right in my backyard, and this is the plant plantain. Now, the indigenous people would have made their way of life by living almost in symbiosis with the land and having respect for the land. They would have used plantain as a type of medicine, and you can also eat it. It is edible. And if you mush up the leaf and rub it on a mosquito bite, it will relieve the pain, or on a wound. Now, they also would have, the Ojibwe people harvested and raised a lot of wild rice on their land, and you can still find wild rice in the forest today. However, it's a little past its best before now, with it coming into fall. So, the Ojibwe people had a rich culture. They participated in the fur trade, were connected with the land, and they had a rich oral mythology, just like that of the story of the Thunderbird that Norval Morceau, the famous artist, Métis artist, ended up calling himself. So his name was Thunderbird, Copper Thunderbird, I believe. And here I have a picture that I was trying to kind of encompass the way I feel about how the Westerns have treated the indigenous people. I believe greed led to a lot of treaties being broken, and they were forcibly displaced from their homes. We learned about the unmarked graves from the residential schools. I remember when I was younger, I took out a book from the Bowmanville Library, and I can't find that book anymore, but it was a really old book, and that's why it caught my eye. And it was actually logs from early settlers that had came over in I believe in like 1870, and there was still then a huge population of indigenous people living on the land here in Bowmanville. But when the early settlers came over, some of the interactions with the indigenous people were positive, such as trading, but there was many instances where people would use their innovative advantages from their society and use it to displace the indigenous people, and that's where things really started going downhill. So I'm going to talk about some of the things I believe that we did that were wrong to the indigenous communities. Until recently, a lot of that history was buried of what was pretty much a genocide against the indigenous people. So, what's the path to reconciliation? Well, I believe that a lot still needs to be done to have proper reconciliation. The Water is Life movement highlights how water and water protectors and keeping the water pure is really a part of the indigenous culture. So, the fact that a lot of indigenous communities still don't have access to clean drinking water is something we need to fix before there's a proper path to reconciliation. We also need to do something to stop the murder of indigenous women, because they go missing and are murdered at a far higher rate than non-indigenous people. No more pipelines through indigenous land. I believe this can all be done by acknowledging the generational trauma that the indigenous communities are living with today and how it does affect their lives today, and how for a proper path to reconciliation, this needs to be honored. Thank you for watching my presentation. I just wanted to say the Ojibwe people and the Métis people lived all throughout, from the area from southern Ontario all the way up past Thunder Bay, which is more than a day's drive to get there. So you can imagine the space they encompass, and that's just in Canada. They also lived in the United States, so they were all across this land, not just in Bowmanville. But I hope that me looking at my particular area connected me with just how it wasn't that long ago that this land was lived on traditionally by the Ojibwe people, and how displacing them from Bowmanville, you know, could have a huge effect on their culture, and a huge effect on their people. So what I really take away from this class is just how more needs to be done for reconciliation through everything I've learned. So I'll end it on that note. So thank you for an amazing semester.